Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Before we get into today's episode, let's talk about the sponsor that makes this entire podcast possible. That's right, Black Rifle Coffee. People have asked me so many times, what is it about the brand? Why Black Rifle? Well, and I'll tell you in the simplest terms that I can. I know the founders, and they're really good friends of mine. And I know them so much better than the public-facing persona that some may see. And I really appreciate who they are, why they founded the company, and what they're doing with the company. If you want to support people that are like that, and you happen to be a coffee fan, go to blackriflecoffee.com. And the suggestion I'm going to start giving between now and the holiday seasons is forward think. There were people in the coffee shop yesterday here in Montana. It was an elderly woman. I'm going to assume that she was a grandmother. And she said she was buying presents for everybody already. T-shirts, mugs, coffee, you name it, they have it on the website. And it fits great underneath the tree, in the stocking. I've given subscriptions as holiday gifts. I've given ways to make coffee, ways to drink coffee. Whatever the coffee lover in your life may enjoy. That's what I recommend doing. So go to blackriflecoffee.com and do exactly that. Or don't. It's your time. It's your money. My guest today is a repeat guest. He was originally on episode number 251. His name is Travis Gribble. He, in that episode, told I don't even know the right word for this, ridiculously powerful story. Not about just one call that he responded to. He was a police officer in a few locations, but mainly in Arizona, the bulk of his career. Me speaking for him, that's not necessarily what he would say. And on one of the calls, he discovered an extremely young girl who was being sexually trafficked and sold. And it unwound him. Not in that moment, but over the next few years. And he went deep on that particular story on episode number 251. I had him back because he is doing, or was doing, an event here in Big Fork with his organization. And we wanted to talk about everything that had occurred post the first episode, the changes in his life, the response that he's gotten from his previous career field, and the impact that it has had. It's a powerful episode. I hope you enjoy it, especially for those first responder, law enforcement communities. Please tune in, pass it along. But even if you're not from that world, trauma is trauma. And if you leave it untreated or you choose not to address it, it's going to choose to address you at a time and place of its choosing. And on that note, I'm going to shut my mouth and we can get into this. Episode, I think it's 303 with Travis Gribble. Enjoy.
Okay, I got the red smoke.
Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Radio.
All right, buddy.
We're back. Michael, let me know when we're ready, man.
We're all good.
We're all good. Famous last words.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I'm nervous. I was nervous last time.
You were?
Yeah.
What was your first podcast, though, right?
Yeah, with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not your first, but it was one of your first?
No.
First.
So it went big time first, and then I've been on quite a few since, but I listened back to it this week.
Yeah.
So I was like, what did I say?
Never do that.
Why?
Never listen back to a podcast you've been a guest on.
Okay.
Do you like the sound of your own voice?
At times.
Why do you keep holding on to that thing?
I don't
What's
know.
going
I'm
on
trying
here?
Is this good?
I mean, you
Okay.
tell me. Is it good for you?
It's good.
All right.
Yeah, so I listened back. I could definitely tell in the beginning, like, shit, I was a little bit nervous, but I feel pretty good today. I'm good.
I can tell. I don't remember specifically whether or not you appeared to be nervous, but oftentimes people will come in and you can tell that they're very nervous.
Right.
And I just try to chat with them. I feel like you guys used to do that in your old career.
We did.
Just, hey, what's going on? You talk to something, not necessarily talk about or around something that's not even remotely in context of what you're going. And it just kind of...
Yeah, it did. And I don't know if you remember this. So the time when I was getting into the story about Ruby, the girl that we rescued,
Yeah.
I was getting a little emotional. And you kind of came out with a little bit of a Joe kind of laughing a little bit, and I'm like,
Gotta
did you do
lighten
that
it up.
intentionally?
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Because I was like, thank God that I didn't bawl my eyes out on here. Although it's okay if you're emotional. It was a big story, but
I am not an expert in human beings, but I do believe we have emotions, so therefore it
do.
is totally okay to be emotional.
it is, yes.
Before we dive into it, we have to talk about the most important aspect. It's hunting season in Montana. Fill me in on how your season's been going.
Zero zilch.
Well-
I've been too busy, and it's your fault.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is what we call extreme ownership. I
know.
like it.
Yes.
Actually, that's my book, Extremely Limited Ownership. Chapter 1, no bad teams, or actually, no bad leaders, only bad teams. Chapter 2 is my boss didn't tell me that.
There you go. Yes. Yes.
Have you even gone out hunting?
I haven't gone yet.
Okay, so the zilch is not that big of a deal.
I know. But I'm not satisfied that I have not been out. So I'm going to get out there quick.
I think are you going to bow hunt? Mm-hmm. Your
Oh, yeah.
timing is actually going to be
Because it's been
right on.
too damn warm anyways. If you've got a long pack out, whatever, the meat's not that great so
Yeah.
that was my only concern. So everyone's telling me like, hey, you're fine. And I think we're about to come into the good part of the season here real quick.
I don't think the rut is active yet.
Yeah.
I was out opening day with my business partner in the coffee shop. We stayed out for a few days in between Helena and Great Falls.
That's a great place. I hear about guys hunting there.
We couldn't tell you because I didn't see or hear anything. And,
shit.
and I believe it was because we were early.
Okay.
And the temperatures were kind of oscillating. A few days after we left, it rained and the temperature dropped, and a guy went into the same area and got an awesome 6x6.
Okay.
Had a horrendous climb out after that.
That's the problem. Yep.
So.
Yeah, and I did. I saw that you already got one in Wyoming. I see all these pictures. I'm like, you feel like shit. Like, man, I should be out. But I have plenty of season. We'll be okay.
I have some friends
You do.
who will remain nameless. Okay. It could or could not be Nelson,
Nelson. I
Who-
now know Nelson.
who will block off inordinate amount of times to hunt. And I actually think he just enjoys camping because he will go out for weeks at a time, come back happier than a pig and shit. Good on him. I totally appreciate that he has the ability to do that. So time spent out, I think what's more important is intentional and targeted time spent out.
There you go.
You could go
Yes.
camp for 3
You
weeks
can.
before the rut and
Right.
maybe interact with an animal if you happen to get in front of them.
Right.
Or you could go out for 3 days during the rut and have more animal interactions than you will for the rest of your year.
And most of us don't have as much time off as Nelson does to go play whenever he wants. So
yeah,
That
I
is
still
us.
am trying to figure out exactly
too.
how he does that.
I think I saw him in February. We were speaking for Flathead County. And he told me, he said, yeah, I'm already planning my weeks out. We were talking about hunting. He's like, I already got it scheduled. You got to put in this early, which I get it. But yeah, wasted time when you don't have a lot of time. I can definitely understand that.
I would rather go out with less time at the right time of year or month than have an inordinate amount of time and just kind of go twiddle your thumbs. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
love being in the outdoors and the hunt, and by that I mean hiking and camping that I went on with my business partner. Love the hell out of it. It was great
Yeah.
to be outside, a little bit more detached.
Yeah.
But Wyoming was a little bit more awesome. We hunted for at least 3 hours before I shot that bull.
That's all it took you?
It was
For God's sake.
It was the first afternoon.
Okay.
It was the first bull that I saw. And here's the thing, though, and you know this hunting. If I had gotten to where I spotted that bull 5 minutes later, never would have seen him. Because
Really?
and I believe it was early in the rut there, but he had.
Was he talking to you?
No.
Okay.
Off in the distance, he had about 10 cows and a spike kind of hanging out, and they were just feeding around a corner.
Okay.
So when I first saw him, he was at probably close to about 1,000 yards. But I could tell, I brought the binos up.
And you were like,
That's a toad.
yep.
And the person I was with, who was the property manager of the property that we were on, it's a large. It's not. I always mess this up. It's not a lease. It's a coal company it's owned by a coal company.
Okay.
And I've become good friends with the manager of the land out there. He said there's one of two places they're going to go if they go in that direction. Both of them, it was around that little finger train. They could have tucked into the first pocket or worked their way around. And he said, I think they're going to go to the second one.
Okay.
So we backtracked and got ahead of them. Waited for a few hours. It was cool. Saw some other elk. I was there with my wife, my business partner. He had never really had an elk interaction or seen one in the wild. So boom, right off the bat, it was awesome. Thought we saw him hike down a hill, got set up, wasn't the same bull. Hike back up the hill, we're looking in the other direction, getting ready to leave, and the guy goes, son of a bitch. He's like, you're going to hate me. Turn around, there they are again. We had about an hour of light, bombed down, went down another one, and they were just totally relaxed, not talking at all though, but already cowed up. Mm-hmm. Right before I was getting ready to shoot, he lays down.
Oh, son of a bitch.
But I'm watching his cows, and he was a little ahead of them, and he laid down, and they were feeding towards him. And I knew that if they got past him, he was going to stand up. So I'm sitting there ranging this, ranging that, if he goes left, if he goes right. And just what I thought was going to happen is the cows got to probably the fringe of what he was comfortable with, stands up, and he starts feeding behind them, stopped totally broadside at just under 500 yards, and ate a 300 Win Mag round.
That's awesome.
Followed by a second 300 Win Mag round, because my theory is if they have one hole, two is better.
Outstanding. I agree.
If they have two holes, three is better.
So it's already rifle season there.
In that particular property area or district,
Okay.
it was rifle season already.
All right. Well, good.
And I had limited time. I love bow hunting, but if you give me limited time and I'm worried about whether or not the rut is really kicked in yet, I'm going to go with the rifle.
Right. All day long. And that's what I know. Rifle season coming. So we'll see.
And you can hunt down by where you live, right?
Oh, yeah. Phillipsburg. Yeah. In fact, he sent me some property the other day. He's like, what's this like? I'm like, hey, it's good to go. So I keep sending him stuff because he's interested. It's a great area, tons of hunting.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge. You know, again, I'm new to the area.
Yeah.
And I'm just learning. Last year I learned a ton. Didn't shoot one, but learn the area that I have to hunt. So
Did you interact with them at all?
I did.
Okay.
Yep. A couple times, but couldn't get anything close enough. So
I think that's the hardest part. And I am not an expert hunter by any stretch, but actually specifically elk, finding them.
Oh, yeah.
If you can find them, all right, at least you have a gambling chance at it.
Right.
If you go out and you're just walking around putting miles on,
Yeah.
you got a 0% chance. And I have
exactly.
a lot of experience doing that.
I do too, more often than not. Yeah. You know, and I think we take it for granted because we live here. I feel bad for the guys that are planning these trips all year long. They've got 1 week to do it. And like you said, if they come here and there's no rut, it's like this week's gone. It was my chance. But
Or if they don't draw.
yeah, exactly. Yep.
For the first time, I actually don't know anybody from out of state that drew.
Okay.
And it could be a variety of factors. I think that they might have issued less tags.
Could be.
Or the other side of that equation, there's substantially more people putting in for them, which nets in the same thing. Less people getting tags.
Yeah, I kind of go towards that. There's probably a lot more people because the more stuff we see online, social media, people want to come to Montana and hunt. So it is what it is.
I don't blame them.
Yeah, I don't either.
That tag for a non-resident is probably $1,400 at this point.
Okay.
It's a general combo.
That's a significant investment before you even get here.
I think ours is $60.
Yeah, I know. It's cheap. I am very thankful. Yeah.
As am I. Mm-hmm. Nelson's a good resource, though.
Oh, man, I just need to take the time because he's like, come up, I'll take you hunting, all this stuff. Again, it has gotten a little busy.
Okay. That's a good thing, though.
It is a good thing. Very thankful. Yeah. It's been a great year since I was here last.
I looked that up. You were episode 251.
That's it.
Usually I ask Michael, but I figured I'd save him some time.
Yep.
So almost damn a year ago. So people can go listen to that, but let's make this one a little bit of a standalone.
Yes, sir.
So give me the wave tops of your career, and then let's dive in a little bit deeper onto I wouldn't describe it as this, but you previously did as kind of like that anchoring incident where it all came a little unraveled.
Yes, absolutely. So career, Travis Gribble is my name, 24 years law enforcement. Spent the first half of my career in Michigan, very small police department, much like probably like a Flathead County. So, one or two deputies on at times. Always wanted to work for a big city. Ended up lateraling to Mesa, Arizona, which was a complete change. 530,000 people, I think they have now, around 850 officers. So big city stuff. Came there, had a little bit of SWAT experience, not much. I look back now, the team that I was a part of in Michigan, we were at best a tactical response team because we had 8 people. Go to Mesa, do my time on the street, put in for the SWAT team, make the SWAT team, and then that's pretty much where I spent the rest of my career. Did a little bit of time back out on patrol as a supervisor before I lateraled back to the team as a team leader, sergeant team leader. So, I dealt with, It's funny. I listen, like I said, we shouldn't listen back, or you said that, but
I say that because I hate the sound of my own voice.
okay.
Which is really weird for somebody who does what I do for a living.
It is weird. Yeah, I would say that. But I wanted to see where I was when I was here last. And this was just the beginning of finally talking about, what I'd went through. I've learned so much in this last year about even in the beginning part of my career to where you just learn to shove shit down because the next call is coming, and our culture tells us that suck it up. If you're having problems with seeing those dead bodies, seeing the suicide, going to the murders, the shootings, that you're weak if you can't handle that.
Before you go on, question. How do they address that in the academy?
For God's sakes, Andy, I knew you were going to ask me this. And
no, but I mean by that is
no.
What I mean by that is how do they front load you with the expectation that you're going to see those things, or do they?
So, what I do now, so that is the last phase of what I would like to do, is to get into the academies, because in my presentations where I travel, my academy, so this was 1996. At best, this is the only thing we did. This will date me a little bit, but VHS tape threw in on a little TV stand, and it was stories of police officers who had been shot in the line of duty, had fought through being shot, whether they killed the suspect or just mentally stayed tough and stayed in the fight, right? Didn't give up, which is extremely important. You have to have that mindset. However, attached to that should have been, what comes after that? What possible struggles will you have? What things, dealing with the post-traumatic stress, which I had never heard of. So we had none of that. And the academies now at best, like actually Nelson's been trying to help me. He called me, I guess it was earlier this year, and he says, hey, man, I want to get you into the Montana State Academy. These new people need to hear what you're talking about. Well, always the biggest struggle is academies like Mesa's. Montana's a little bit different. I think their academy is only 3 months long, and Mesa it's 6 months, and every single minute's planned for. So trying to get a new subject into it is always difficult. And with like Mesa, they do like an hour, talk about mental health wellness. This is what we have. We have a peer group. We have, EAP, Employee Assistance Fund, that type, or program, that type of thing. But what I would like to see happen in the academies, and this is not going on, like I've had the opportunity now to travel the country, to where someone like me comes in, because Mesa, for instance, officers that have been in officer-involved shootings, they will come in the academy and talk about that experience, right? To give them strength, to give them resilience. So we need to have people that have come through the other side like I have, experienced post-traumatic growth, still in the agency, because there's people like that, and they come and they talk about, yeah, this call fucked me up. And this is a normal human response. Because our culture right now, it's still so thick as far as if you come forward for help, it can be career suicide. You're looked at weak. Even if your agency is saying these things from the overhead perspective of like, yes, we're concerned about mental health wellness. In the corner of this squad room, the corner of this lunchroom, out on the street, still the culture is saying, you come forward, you're weak. You shouldn't have been in this profession. So yeah, there's not much in the academies, but that's like the last step in my process. I want to get there. And it doesn't have to be me. I want other people going to talk to academies that have experienced things and give these people the understanding, because I say this in my presentation, we've kind of lied to them, to be honest with you, that it's this exciting thing, which it is. When I joined the academy, I want to go catch bad guys, do all this stuff. And it is exciting. You bring your families in, they pin your badge on, you go hit the street, and then 6 months later, you and your family are like, what the fuck happened to this person I knew 6 months ago? Because they're going every single day. I think we have underestimated the fact that, a police officer, 4+ shifts a week, they are going into chaos. And then 2 hours later, they might be at home sitting with their children, and they just were stepping in brain matter from a suicide.
So I understand the VHS and not from a technical perspective. I'm old.
You remember it.
Michael's Googling it right now, or binging it, whatever, DuckDuckGo, whatever browser he uses over there.
Yes.
What I meant to say, or what I mean is, I understand presenting that lens to the students of officers who found themselves and maybe in deeper water, and they fought their way through, because
correct.
at least in my experience, the unwillingness to give up, to make a conscious decision that you are going to keep going, even if you think what you're trying to do is not possible, is largely the determining factor.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about officer-involved shootings. I haven't looked at the stats in a while, but I think it's sub 10% of officers are ever actually involved in one.
You were right.
But I'm going to estimate that, and I hate absolutes. I don't like 0% and 100%, but I'm going to estimate that if you're a law enforcement officer, there is a 100% chance that you are going to respond often to other people's tragedies. So that videotape is focusing on the anomaly as opposed to the norm. I mean, in your academy, did they talk to you about the type of things that you would be seeing, the suicides? I mean, talk to Nelson. It's suicide is probably more common than we would like to think.
Yeah.
Everywhere. It seems when you get a little bit more rural, like we are up here, it can become statistically even higher. So it's not uncommon for them to encounter that. A good friend of mine, Michael and I do jiu-jitsu with him. He used to be the coroner. He's a deputy as well. You may know Aaron.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
He was goddamn coroner.
Yeah.
So he was every freaking death, natural cause or somebody, Jackson Pollock the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to that. I mean, where is that addressed?
That's the problem. So it's becoming – so I face a couple different challenges when I do this. Number one, well, you talk about 100% sure we're going to see those things, right? We talk about –
For clarity, that was an estimate.
No,
from somebody who was never –
No, I mean, how do you not? I don't know what – even –
Yeah,
I don't know how you don't. So right now as we stand today, unfortunately, and this is only reported, and I follow bluehelp.org. They're the ones that track suicide in first responders. 60 police officers have taken their own lives this year. Now, for them to be able to report those numbers, the family has to agree to it. Mm-hmm. They need to give how this happened, all this stuff. And so a lot of that stuff never gets disclosed. So that number's most likely a lot higher. Officers killed in the line of duty total right now, 82. Officers killed by gunfire in the low 30s. So if you are an organization that says, we don't really need to talk about this, we don't have the money, in my opinion, you're already failing. Because we do have a problem. And I faced a lot of it. You'll hear some chiefs or some sheriffs, because I've been able to speak to them. It comes down to financial, because they're worried, like, okay, how are we going to pay for this? Quite frankly, it's not my problem. I don't mean to be dismissive of that thought, but you chose to be this person that's the leader of your organization. You have to understand it's a situation we're dealing with. And I hear this too. They say, why is this all of a sudden such a big thing? I will argue and say it's not.
Yeah.
Since my career in 1996, I could sit here on a piece of paper, write down names, see pictures of their faces of officers that have been complete train wrecks, whether it's alcohol, women, professional. I would argue they were dealing with some shit and didn't know how to deal with it.
I look back at my old profession. It's not – what shifted is the culture and the willingness largely and oftentimes from those at the top to be vocal about their own struggles or just honest about their own experience.
Right.
It kind of defined the trickle-down effect of those people at the top, regardless of the scrutiny or criticism, which is – in the teams that I came into – man, I started at the same time. So I went in the Navy in 96. There hadn't been a whole lot that had happened since Vietnam. Little Grenada, little Panama, Mogadishu. There was a couple guys there. It was a culture of like toughness was the currency of the day, physical and mental.
Right.
It was shifting, and I think has drastically shifted since I've been out. I've been out for over 10 years now, so I cannot speak to what's currently going on. But the things that people were dealing with didn't change. I mean, there was a gap in our career field from direct combat operations, but when those kicked back on, the problems that the individuals were dealing with were no different than Vietnam or the Korean War or World War II or World War I or probably the Civil War, or since the first time that a human being picked up a weapon and decided to say, I want to see the inside of your head on the outside of your head.
Right. Exactly.
I don't think it's really recreating the wheel.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think it's pretty, I think it's dismissive upon organizations if they take that standpoint. And I'll give you an example. Myself, and I'll tell you all about this, but when I travel now, I actually do something when I travel outside the state of Montana, my therapist from Arizona, she goes and presents with me. And then now I have a couple in Montana that they come with me when I'm in the state. And we were in Eastern Washington doing this program for an organization. And unfortunately, I won't say the name of the large PD, but officers listening to this will know who it is, I'm sure. But a very large organization in the United States. Big cities have what are called U.S. Marshal Task Force. In fact, they may even have one in Flathead County. And when it's a big city like Mesa was, you had, the federal marshals, and then we had like 5 or 6 detectives from Mesa that were assigned to them. Violent offender units. So they go after the worst of the worst. Homicide suspects, armed robbery, anything with weapons, they're going to take them off. So this organization's no different. And this situation happened, and again, people that aren't police officers will be like, what the fuck is Travis talking about? But if I'm an officer and I think about if I'm going to get into a shooting, what would the best case scenario be for me to get through? A known felon, known to carry a weapon, face tattoos, neck tattoos, I don't care, like just a bad dude that comes out, presents a weapon, I have to put them down because I was in fear for my life or others. That's best case scenario.
You're talking about from a justifiable perspective?
Yeah, justifiable. Don't deal with any of the politics, any of this bullshit. So this large organization did such a thing. They did a vehicle containment, which is a maneuver the marshals use when someone's out in public to get them pinned in. The vehicle stopped, try to take them into custody. And this suspect comes out of the vehicle with gun in hand and presents it. And so they put him down. 4 shooters in this event. One of these individuals, 18-year detective for this large organization. And just to paint a picture of what a person like that looks like, from Mesa, to get on our violent offender unit, you either came through SWAT or you had been in street crimes, and you had probably been in quite a bit of stuff and performed overall very well, able to handle stress, able to think, instantly when you're, dealt a certain deck of cards or hand of cards. So this happens. This 18-year detective is one of the shooters, totally legit shooting, like good to go. Next day, kills himself. And we're telling this lieutenant about it. Lieutenant's like, what the fuck? Like, what? That's as good as it gets. I'm like, hey, man, but you don't know what those other 18 years had in his background. And I know for us back in Mesa, our, SWAT is different now because now I'm talking about it. And so is the special operations community or that division. But those units don't like to talk about this stuff because it is seen as weakness to say, yeah, all these things in my past have started to add up. We give the analogy of like when your cup, you need to be bailing some shit out of your cup throughout your career. And that's why we want to get in the academies to make these young kids know this is normal. You need to deal with this stuff. It's going to add up, and we don't know when it's going to add up. Like you and I, you had a different childhood than I did. We all bring life experience into this profession. I don't know how you're going to deal with this shit. And some of these critical incidents, science cannot tell yet, but some of it doesn't process right. And that's why we talk about the EMDR therapy, things like that. So we can't just say, what the fuck, that was an easy shooting. That's good all day long. You don't know what the background is. You don't know what they were dealing with.
What would the normal protocol have been for that officer? Probably 24 to 48 hours and then an investigation or statement?
Yeah. So I'll give you from Mesa, and I think this is pretty standard for large city. Now, it may be different for smaller towns, but 40 hours off. But before Mesa, when we'd be involved in shootings, you could not leave the scene till we would get the union attorney there. Mm-hmm. The county attorney would come. Our homicide division would come, and we do what are called walkthroughs. Give this public safety statement of like, okay, this is what happened. I presented my weapon. They'll always ask you, how many rounds did you shoot? Usually you get it wrong. And then when you're done, you're cleared. You go home for at least 40 hours, and then you do, again, another crazy thing about our culture, because my background, but you have to go get cleared by a therapist to come back. At least in Mesa and the special operations, They make you go see someone within those first 40 hours, and then you also go back at the 30-day mark and 60-day mark, because we want you to check in to make sure, hey, what's come up? Because usually that first week, I don't even know how I feel. I probably haven't slept real well. There's shit probably in the media. Your family's dealing with stuff, and so you don't even know, okay, yeah, I think I'm good, but let's talk again at the 30-day mark and the 60-day mark. And I've heard you talk about this with the military. It's a controversial word, mandatory. Mm-hmm. I believe now we should be having officers go in for mandatory checkups after these critical incidents. And actually, Flathead's been one of the first organizations that they have implemented the policy, because we go around, we do some consulting now of there's 5 or 6 different critical incidents, and it can vary per department. But you can imagine, like my incident that I dealt with Ruby, finding a child like that in a rescue. Like, yeah, you're going to go in, you're going to have 40 days off or 40 hours off. You're going to go in and do a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, and 120-day checkup to make sure you're okay.
You're going to have to find a balance there. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between sitting down and doing a checkup and sitting down and doing a checkup.
You're right.
You can physically be present and God, I hate to say this, but anybody from your career or these type of communities knows this. The things that you need to say to be cleared, it's not rocket surgery.
Right.
You could figure out what not to say, and you can bullshit your way through those encounters.
Yep.
I don't know if the answer is mandatory, because some people rebel against anything mandatory.
Boy, do they?
Except for, I guess, sleep and drinking water. Because it's really, you could be trying to move the ocean in an eyedropper at a time. If the person there doesn't want to be there, or they still feel like they're going to get that critique or judgment or shame, pick your word, whatever word that would prevent you from actually opening up. It could be fear of losing their job. Maybe they just got to the SWAT team, right? Or they got to a position that they've been wanting to get to, and they're afraid of losing it. Those people, I don't know how willing they are. And I say that having been somebody who's been in that seat.
Right.
I don't know how willing you are to truly be honest, knowing that it might have potential career consequences.
So the mandatory thing I know is always a challenge. So with Flathead, their union had to approve it. What's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is they sit there and don't say shit.
Yeah.
Or do we save another life? Because they feel, and this also comes with working with a very specific culturally competent first responder therapist or veteran therapist like they have here in Flathead. Brandon Spangler with Warriors Mindset. In fact, we're doing an event tomorrow. He speaks with me, and he has built these relationships up. And what has been interesting with Flathead, because they contract with him, so he's available to them 1 day a week, and he does not report to the organization who comes and sees him like just randomly. And then they have this critical incident policy in place, but they have seen quite a change here where like people coming to the undersheriff or the sheriff and being like, holy shit, I never knew how good this would be to get some of this shit off my chest.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Andy, I get it, the mandatory, because some people don't like that, but
I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying there's a balance there somewhere, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
Because doesn't it come kind of in the same lines with, like, I've heard you talk about mandatory with how many deployments you do. Same type of thing of, like, I've heard you say, like, when you're in it, fuck no, you're not going to tell me. I want to keep going.
About the question I asked the guys that I used to work with is whether or not we should limit combat exposure.
Right.
You'd never be able to talk somebody young in there, and I'm looking at in the time machine mirror at my own self. I would have raged against that policy, probably even knowing that it would be beneficial and healthy for me.
Yeah.
I think even some people would rage and argue against it, even knowing the potential consequence that it would have on their life by that excessive exposure. And, you brought up a point. Again, I'm not a doctor by any stretch, but I have in my own experience, if you have 6 people, actually that's probably too many people for in a room. You go into a room with probably a minimum of 2, probably 4 people. Right. Something happens in there, you're going to get 4 different responses. There's stuff that is like water bouncing off a Teflon pan, and then the same incident might completely overfill somebody's cup.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And again, I used to be an asshole about this stuff. I used to be the one on the SWAT team making fun of people. I used to be the guy on the team that if we'd have someone want to test, maybe a couple years ago, they had been an officer-involved shooting. They didn't handle it, in my opinion, correctly, and they need some extra time off. We're like, oh, they can't handle stress. We don't want them on the team. But we don't know. Again, we had that being in the big city when there was an officer-involved shooting. Usually there was more than one shooter. So you have 3 shooters. 2 of them are perfectly fine. And then this other one, something's not setting right with them. But that, again, not for me to judge now. I regret we were assholes, to be quite honest with you, because we thought that was weakness. Because I didn't know any better. That's what our culture said.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to say that, like, no, these are normal human responses. That's what, and I never even heard about, I think looking back, PTSD, the way we looked about it in law enforcement, at least coming up when I did, my picture of PTSD was the Vietnam vet who had mental health illness and was a drunk sleeping on a corner. So when you would talk about any of that stuff, post-traumatic stress with us, we're like, well, that's not me. We're out here, fighting crime. Like, that's some guy from Vietnam that doesn't have his shit together. Totally ignorant because we didn't know because it wasn't talked about.
It's really painting with a broom.
Yeah.
That stereotype applies to the minority. It's 100% true for some people. Yep. But if you paint an entire community with that brush, it's so wildly inaccurate.
It is. Yeah. So a lot of regrets. And that's why we're trying to educate people now. Like, hey, this is what post-traumatic stress. At the minimum, I don't believe you're in this career and you don't deal with at least numerous incidents, maybe dozens in your career, that you don't have to at least post-traumatic stress afterwards. What that even looks like. They say that on average, and of course, we've got big city PDs like mine. You've got Flathead County. You've got smaller. I think I looked up, and the average size police department, people don't understand this, across the United States is less than 25 officers. Most of them are really small. Mm-hmm. But they say on average, a police officer deals with over 700 critical incidents in a career versus the normal citizen, 4 or 5 maybe. So if you think about the brain and what that's going to, possibly put you through, we have to address it. We need to look at it. And that's all we're trying to do is make it normal. Like, yeah, look at me. Like, I've done all this stuff. It's fine. There's people that have done more than me. They're coming forward now. You remember Paul, the Orlando SWAT guy that was here with Nelson? So I did this event in New York where I'm in front of all these SWAT leadership from across the state. I was nervous as shit. I'm like, because it was the first time that I had just went in front of SWAT people. Before it had been like agencies. And Paul told me, it was when he was up here doing the podcast, that it was in the wintertime, and I was about ready to go. He said, Travis, listen to this. He had come out of one of his buildings, and a newer officer, I think only a few years on, but had already been in some shit. He had saw that Paul was a part of that organization. What's it called?
Hookers and Heroes. Which is not what it's called.
Hose for Heroes. I don't know, but it's hilarious.
It has to do with fishing.
Hook a Hero.
Hook a Hero.
Yes.
I believe I added the ERS to that.
How can you
inappropriately?
How can you not? But anyways, he's coming out of a building one day, and this young officer says, hey, I saw you were on this board. I saw that you, as this 15-year SWAT guy, have been in all this shit, is willing to talk about it. I went forward for help, and it's been the best thing ever.
Have you stayed in contact with Paul?
We Instagram, that kind of stuff back and forth. Why? What's up with him?
Has he told you what happened in his department for coming on the podcast?
No. Did he get some shit?
He is no longer on SWAT. He is no longer a training officer. And I had to do an IA interview.
Fuck.
Yeah. It's total and complete horseshit.
What did he didn't say. He was
great. It was a joke that I made. And so, okay, I'm talking.
For God's
I don't know how
sakes,
far
man.
I can. So I don't know how far I can get into this. I'm going to talk in generalities.
Okay.
A comment that I made that he responded to directly irritated one of his supervisors who ran it up the flagpole. So I don't know what came of the investigation, but I was at Origin Camp, skipped a session, and sat in front of a computer for a very short and bizarre 5-minute conversation with the investigating officer. And it hasn't been great. The guy was a great representative of a law enforcement officer. He wasn't here representing his police department.
Right.
And what message does that send to anybody else who may want to educate or talk about the things that police have to deal with?
Andy, see this gets my blood boiling because okay.
My plan is to burn
God's
that
sakes,
fucking department to the
motherfucker,
ground.
do it.
If they punitively...
You think is there a possibility he might lose his job?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But when they take from you the things that you have worked a career for because of something that somebody else said that irritated a influential group in society.
Yep. Got you. I'm tracking now. This is the problem. Everyone asks, like, why are we having a problem recruiting police officers across the country? It's bullshit like that. I'm telling you, because people in leadership positions, I don't even like to say poor leaders, because that would give them some sort of like, okay, maybe you're okay, you're just not doing it very well. Like, you should not.
I don't think that's what the word poor means, but
you should not be in that fucking position. Yeah. But this is the kind of shit. Like, that was a great podcast.
Don't confuse leadership position with leadership.
Right.
They're two very separate things.
Yeah.
I talk about when I speak publicly about leadership, I'm very clear. I actually define leadership by talking about what it's not.
Okay.
Because it's easier. It's not rank, title, or position. Because I've watched people, to include myself, galactically fail with all three of those.
Yes, we all have.
It's not about those things, because if it was, you'd never see somebody who failed that had one, if not all of those. To pull a guy with that much experience off, it's a detriment to the department, and it's a detriment to the citizens that those people swear an oath to uphold the law and protect.
Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you that Paul has a great reputation in that organization.
I'm sure he does.
So do you know how many other officers you've now affected that are like, and they're already given the middle finger to the leadership, but it's like, yeah, that disappoints me. I have not heard that. The only contact we've had recently is someone, I always mentioned his organization at the end of my seminars.
Hookers and Heroes.
Hookers and Heroes. I love
Michael,
that.
will you please look? I want to actually give. Is it Hook a Hero? Will you look that up, Michael?
Yes,
please.
It is a Hook a Hero. But someone from one of my things, his wife or something, put in the application to go and do one of his retreats, and he said, "Hey, thank you so much. We got the one person." So that's disappointing, but not surprising.
I do not believe the IA investigation has finished.
Mm-hmm. They usually take as long as they fucking want, which is disappointing, and
I am going to reserve my time and attention for the issue until it has finished. And if it, I'm just gonna do everything I can to try to swing a spotlight on that situation. If it goes the way that I think is just detrimental to not only his career but the public that he serves.
Right. Yeah. And he's a great voice. He has great experience for the community. Obviously, I just told this story about this kid that he made an impact on.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. Like, Paul has been willing to come forward and say, yeah, the shit affected me. I got some help. Now look at me. I'm still going, and then this bullshit. So not surprising.
Michael, what's the correct website?
I believe it's hookahero.com. I think it's this one that I just pulled up.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure, as much as I want it to be Hookers for Heroes, hookahero.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. At least we can leave people with the correct website.
I'm very sorry that happened. I'll have to learn more about that for sure.
Check in with him.
I will. God damn it. Pisses me off.
Did the 18-year detective that killed himself, did he leave a suicide note?
Do not know.
God.
I wish I could tell you that, but some of that stuff. Yeah, this department, at least the chief was very vocal, did press conferences on it. This organization actually is probably leading the way across the country with mental health wellness units and what they're doing for the organization. But the reason it's so important, again, I don't know. Who knows what this guy has all going on in his life, right? The fact that people need to understand right now, law enforcement police officers are 54% more likely than the general public to take their own lives because they're comfortable with firearms, the stress they deal with. There's not a suicide scene that I'm sure someone could come up with something that I probably haven't seen, from walking through, watching brain matter drip down, whatever it is. None of that stuff is fearful to us. Like, yep, been there, done that, seen it. it's an option. Like it was for me. It was on the table. If I couldn't get myself better, all this other shit, it's like, yeah, I've thought of suicide. To hear, because we talk about that, like that's a normal for veterans, for first responders to have that thought is normal. It's not the end of your career. It should not be the end of your career. Do we need to talk about it? We do. Let's talk about why you're feeling that way.
I also think it's normal to not have those feelings.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
You know, you don't want to
No.
paint with a different broom and say this is absolutely going to happen. I think there's a spectrum.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Because, yeah, you may never feel these. You may, but understand that it's all normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We don't know, again, why one person may think of this, why another doesn't. So,
yeah, I asked about the note, not to be macabre about it at all, but just if there was any, obviously the action was already taken, but if there was a breadcrumb or indication where there could be a pressure relief point or an insertion for some type of mechanism for people in the future.
well, I would hope, yeah,
That's a real quick turnaround time.
it is. Like, and again, you probably got to get cooperation from the family. What does this look like? But yeah, to dissect that 18-year career, like how did we get to this point? And like what you're saying, where could we have jumped in there?
Yeah.
What did we miss something? Was this, you know, like in Mesa, our violent offender unit, there's numerous guys on that team, 4 and 5 officer involved shootings. I don't know. When is it too much? I don't know.
Probably depends on how much time you have in between and what you do
Yeah.
to stress relief.
Exactly. So, you know, we had proposed and it got shot down because of manpower. So SWAT, we were right across the offices from the violent offender unit. We had this one lieutenant who was actually a former SEAL dude, SEAL Team 5, and he wanted to merge both units. And then he wanted to have a squad that was doing like advanced training for the entire organization. You would have some people that choose to be there, but there would always be a couple positions. Like if someone had just gotten into another shooting, they can go over there for maybe 3 months. Just train. Maybe you're not operational. Maybe you get some time to, you know, decompress, but you're not sitting at home doing nothing. At least you're still passing on your knowledge. It got shut down because of manpower.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it is what it is.
To make it standalone, tell me about Ruby.
Yeah. From the call? Yeah. So, 2016, first day, I promoted to sergeant. So I was on the team, promoted to sergeant, had to go back to the street. So you enter what's called a sergeant training program. First day on, we do briefing. I'm with a training sergeant. Guy's got like 28, 29 years on. Nothing's happening at the time. After briefing, we go down to his office. We're just doing stupid administrative stuff that comes with being a road sergeant, teaching me how to do those things.
How many officers would a typical road sergeant have underneath them?
We had anywhere from 6 to 10.
Okay.
But there was times like you may be supervising a couple squads, like if the other sergeant was off. But yeah, what was assigned to you, 6 to 10.
Okay.
So call kicks out on the radio, and a male individual had left an apartment where he had met a dude for sex, like met on some online bullshit stuff. When he called in, he wouldn't give his name or give his location, but he said, when we got done, this individual offered up a little girl to me, and I said, no, I want nothing to do with it. So he left. Thank God he at least called. A very heads up newer patrol officer is driving in this area. I don't even know if he was assigned to this call, but he had heard the call, and it's a shitty area of Mesa. He sees in a city park what we described as a tweaker, male individual, backpack, BMX bike, but the bike is dumped and he's kind of pacing around with a phone. Like you can tell, like his arms up, like he's on the phone. This hero patrol officer goes and makes contact.
Was he still on with the 911 dispatchers when he made contact?
He was.
Son of a bitch.
So when they rolled up, sometimes when you're checking on, you can hear, bleed over through the radio. She hears the car coming up. She's like, I think you're out with the individual. Sure as shit, it was our person. So now we have him identified. He's giving more details. So I'm like, okay, we better go to this call. Because in the big city, sometimes you hear some weird shit and you're like, we'll see if this is even legit or not. Well, now we actually had the person identified. He was giving more details. We're going. So I answered up as a sergeant to go take this call as a sergeant. So we head to this apartment complex. It's set up, no back windows, all the parking lots on the backside of these apartments, like in a horseshoe shape with a playground in the middle. So we meet out in the parking lot. There's a little bit of a debate with Lieutenant that was quite frankly just lazy. He's like, oh, we don't have enough to go up to this house. I'm like, bullshit. I can go up and knock on the door. Let's see what happens. We have a description of the individual, etc. The sergeant I was with, he's a good dude, but kind of like doesn't like to ruffle feathers. He was keeping his mouth shut, but I was the arrogant SWAT guy. I'm like, LT, Lieutenant, let me go up. Let me take some people.
Were they worried about just the threshold for probable cause?
Yeah, so it's not even going to be probable cause. What it's going to fall under is what's called exigent circumstances. So there's 10 exceptions to the search warrant rule. So if any time in law enforcement, if we can, the courts would like us to go and get a search warrant before we invade someone's privacy like that, right? There are some exceptions. One of them is exigent circumstances that can fall under for we believe someone's in harm's way and we don't have the time to wait for the search warrant. We need to go and do this now. So that's what I was saying. This is enough for me to go up to the door. And so finally the lieutenant said, fine, Gribble, you're the SWAT guy, take a couple people and go up and see
And you
what
weren't
happens.
talking about breaching. You were just talking about knocking and announcing.
Yeah, so for instance, like narcotics units, it's the old thing. I honestly don't know if they still do it. But it used to be the knock and talk. Like they'd maybe be working street level drugs and, they'd make a couple stops. Or like, oh, yeah, something's coming out of that apartment. You just go up and knock on the door, see what happens. Maybe you'll see stuff. Maybe you'll smell stuff. Maybe they'll be stupid, which a lot of times they are, and tell you like, oh, yeah, we have drugs in here. Shit, we're done. It's called a knock and talk.
What?
Oh, Andy.
That's a high-level criminal organization right there.
How do you think we're so...
You've caught me.
Yeah. How do you think we're so successful, for God's sakes? My wife always says, she's like, yeah, we don't catch the smart ones. And she's right. She's like, you're fucking dumb. But anyways.
Do you have any drugs in here?
Yeah.
Yes. Take me to jail.
Shit. Yes. How many times it happens? Yeah, it's hilarious, man. But it happens. So the lieutenant finally said, take a couple people, go up. So it's on the second level. So I went up and told a couple of these patrol officers, a real senior group of people, and I said, hey, just, get yourself set up, kind of cross cover on the door. We're going to knock on behind you. We had a couple more people behind us. They knock on the door, and almost immediately the door opens, and it's a male, and he's dressed up like a pink ballerina with makeup on, and it's just how this caller that had described to us. So I'm like, okay, this is enough. We detained him, got him handcuffed, pushed him away, handing him off to the other officers. So I said, hey, we're going to push through just looking for anyone in distress. And so when you do a search like this without a search warrant, I can't be looking in drawers and all this shit. We're not looking for that stuff. We're looking for where a body could be, where someone could be hiding, that type of stuff. So we pushed in. These two officers went ahead of me. Immediately, I noticed off to the right, there was like a closed door. So I said, hey, you guys keep pushing. I'm going to, cover this door and cover your backside while you finish the apartment up. And they did. Very small, but shitty. And they came out and said, hey, boss, we got nothing here. So I said, okay, I got to check this door. And it was a small little closet door. I said, I got this. And had my pistol out, left hand, opened the door. I start clearing. It's not like a coat closet where you're hanging a bunch of shit in, but it's kind of more like a storage unit that these apartments had. Just about knee-high piled worth of shit. Just junk, garbage, that kind of stuff. I scan a second time. I look down in front of me, and a black trash bag stands out to me. So I holster, go to pick the bag up, and as I do, a little girl's head pops up. She's got duct tape across her mouth. Immediately overwhelmed by smell. She's in her own feces and urine, shaved head, but she's alive. She's blinking, but no emotion. So get her up, and kind of the bag's falling off the same time. Her hands are bound with gray duct tape, and so are her feet. So obviously we, getting her the tape cut off. We already had fire and medical on standby, so we get them coming in. And the sergeant was with me, couldn't continue. He was emotional, which that is fine, but I just went stoic. Not easy, but at this time of my career, so I've been in it for 20 years, seen a lot of stuff, didn't think there was anything that could ever shake me. And this one did. Like, immediately felt like heat, like heart racing, like, what the fuck is this? Never felt like this. But even though we knew that kind of stuff goes on in the world, once you see it, it's like, what the fuck is this? So, yeah, we continued through that call. There's a lot of shit, as you can imagine, goes on. Went to the hospital. Unfortunately, lots of injuries to her. Ended up finding out, this is really shitty, but her mom had been dropping her off the house to feed her drug habit. And this was not a relative. And, he was pushing her out to other individuals. The grandma knew about it. They're all in prison now. I will tell everyone because, I do tell this story in my presentations, but I will tell you she was adopted by the first foster care family that took her in. And just lo and behold, this week I actually talked, there's a group, I won't mention their name because I don't want to give any disclosure about, Ruby. She has a new name now. Mm-hmm. But I talked to the founding member of this organization that works with sexual assault victims. This week, we talked on, I think it was Tuesday, as I'm driving to Missoula, and she is thriving now. She still has some issues, obviously, probably will the rest of her life, but Ruby is safe, and she is good to go. Actually got a photo of her, which I'm like, I had not seen her since that day, obviously. So to have this new photo, oh, man, it was incredible. But
does she have a recollection or memory of what happened to her?
Man.
Not that removes the trauma, but I mean, fuck.
Andy, I got to be careful because I don't want to give out too many details, but I can tell you there are triggers.
Yeah.
So, and that was hard to hear. I appreciate the lady being honest with me because I wanted to know, like, hey, is she dealing with anything? Like, what's going on? Because I played these scenarios over in my head. Like, maybe, I remember that day she had no emotion. So I'm like, okay, brain is an amazing thing. Did she just shut down, make herself cold, doesn't remember things? I don't know how all that works. But yeah, she's still dealing with some stuff.
Which again, to go back to normalizing this type of thing,
yes.
Trauma, the type of trauma that you are describing is at a level of horrendousness that escapes my vocabulary and ability to describe it. To not have anything to work through or deal with, that would be abnormal.
And it probably would be, I'm not naive. It'll probably be the rest of her life. She's going to have issues to work through.
Yeah.
And knowing all that, I cannot, I know you talked about it last time, what I would like to do to that asshole. Like there's no, oh man, nothing could be too violent in my opinion. That day, I wanted to, I wouldn't
want it to be too violent.
Yes.
Because
drug on. Yes. Man.
Moderately violent assisted by modern medicine to continue the violence for a long period of time.
Right. I think as society, are we fucking stupid to think that prison's going to do he's not going to get better. The mom to make those fucking choices. It's hard to wrap your mind around, man, but that was just one little part of it. So I kept pushing through because of the culture. I wanted to get back to the team as a team leader. Never told anyone, suffered in silence, drinking like a son of a bitch because, my former profession, alcohol's a part of it anyways, Tough day, you go drink. Well, I was an idiot because when you're thinking emotionally instead of rationally of how you're trying to deal with shit, okay, well, alcohol helped me. Just kept going and going, and then the calls kept stacking from there. And then, finally in March of 2021, had a hostage rescue that was not. We thought we were going into rescue, and everyone was dead. That fucking took me out. And now I'm doing what I do.
To go back to the apartment complex with Ruby, I'm curious, not necessarily about what happened with her. You guys were able to articulate the exigent circumstance.
Yes.
Once you find her, I'm assuming that you're going to go through that place with a fine-tooth comb, but you go and get the warrant.
Now, yes, you're exactly right. Now it's a search warrant.
Is the department able to reverse engineer this shit so the people who need to pay and suffer do so?
The investigation went on there was a lot of stuff, unfortunately, that detectives had to find in computers.
Yeah.
So there's been other people, yes.
But it was at least a way for them to reverse engineer and find some of the perpetrators. Yeah. Good.
Yes, absolutely. Because that's, I can't even believe that there's a sick group of people out there. I know it goes on, Andy. I hear your shows. I my wife was in Internet Crimes Against Children. I know this shit goes on, but when it touches you that close, you're like,
Yeah.
these people, like, I'm driving in the city of Mesa, like, who the fuck is around me that is a part of that part of society? Like, I still can't even wrap my mind around it. Like, what would cause you to do that?
Forget what I was talking about or who was on, but I made the recommendation for people to go to the sex offender registry website and just put in your address or your kid's school.
Oh, I did hear you say this.
It was Michael. Who were we talking to? Because we were talking about the shit app in San Francisco. Do you know what it's called, by the way?
The shit app?
Snap. Crap Snap. Is what it's called.
That's pretty funny.
I'm not joking. I looked it up.
Okay.
Who were we talking to though? Because it was
wasn't-
Tyler. Tyler Carnevale.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We were talking about Snap Crap. We didn't know it was called that at the time, which is an amazing. Congratulations to you, sir or ma'am, who came up with that name.
The fuck?
So many people have emailed me since then or made comments that they went into that website and they put in the information, their address, and they said it blew up. Like their map is just, it's like neon lights.
shit.
It looks like a Christmas tree. Mm-hmm. It's startling.
Yeah.
You almost don't want to do it, but you can't bury your head in the sand when it comes to things like that.
And one thing I would say for people, you have to do that because I know, man, I guess this was in Mesa. I remember in Michigan. You also have to understand, like, there's been some cases where maybe an 18-year-old kid's with a 16-year-old, you're a sex offender now. So read the details because, like, you know what I mean? Like some of that stuff. But when you look the details, people will be shocked, like how many people are around.
And for people who are about to go on what I'm going to call that journey of going to that website, what you just said, I think, is very important.
Yep.
It doesn't provide graphic detail, but the description of the charges is in there.
Good. Yeah. So they need to look. But be
Because
careful.
there are some people on there who would say 20 and their girlfriend was 17.
Yes.
And I understand.
I'm not getting into that. Yeah.
I'm not getting into that either. There, in my mind, it's a consensual party separated by an age that it flips it into that category. That's to be argued in the court of law. Mm-hmm. The 50-year-old with the van down by the river with lollipops that look a lot like their dick is a different story.
Exactly. Yeah, it's out of control. So, yeah, you can go down that rabbit hole, but be careful because, like even...
what do you do?
I live in Phillipsburg, Montana, a very small town, and I know people have been run out of town, which is I'm all for.
I had a Full Auto Friday. Oh, I mentioned it again on the Full Auto Friday. It actually wasn't with Tyler. Somebody he had emailed me in. Their neighbor was a registered sex offender, did 20-plus years, and they have kids, and I believe the person was a truck driver, gone, and their question was, what do you do? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a conundrum.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably, if I had small children, I'd probably want to confront, which might not be a good thing, but I don't know that'd be hard.
I don't know where the legalities are. I may or may not have floated the idea of internet research with a ream of printer paper and maybe just, I don't know how things get into people's front door. I don't know.
Yeah. I know. It's a mystery.
I don't know how you could educate your entire neighborhood or city. It's hard to say.
Yes.
If you know what I mean.
And that's what that's for, right? They want us to know. So, yeah.
Yeah. And again, not a legal expert. I got my Juris Doctorate by watching Suits, all 9 seasons, though, so pretty good. Probably ready for trial law at this point.
Absolutely.
How long was it between the incident with Ruby and the hostage rescue, which it sounds like
2021.
And the first Ruby was when?
2016.
So 5 years.
Yeah. Just letting it fester, dealing with it inappropriately. Night terrors. Depression. Never knew before until I got therapy. Depression can reveal itself through anger. I was fucking pissed all the time.
What do you think it was about the hostage rescue that was the icing on the cake for you?
That's an interesting thing because when it first happened, I did not know why I was reacting the way that I did.
And when you say that you were done, you mean you showed up to that crime scene and it was just
horrific.
I mean, for you as an individual, you just couldn't continue.
So I'll tell you. So that night we had already been kind of busy, and kind of a weird part of the story. My wife had been pushing for me to go see someone. I'd had a shitty experience with someone that shouldn't even be a therapist that claimed to be, and I was done with therapy. But she was going to someone new, and so was her entire unit that was culturally competent. All she does is first responders and veterans. This Monday afternoon, I was supposed to have the appointment, but a barricade kicked out in the city of Mesa. So I'm like, oh, sweet, I don't have to go to the appointment. Stupid, man.
Suppose that's a glass half full approach?
Yes. So then we go deal with the barricade and get home, and then this hostage rescue kicks out. And it was a little girl. She had exited, escaped. She was a hero. Actually found out her dad was a suspect. He beat her, shot her as she was down on the ground, but only hit her arm and almost severed at the elbow. She played dead. A fucking little girl, and she's like, thinks to do this. Well, he thought, we believe he thought she was dead, so didn't shoot again.
Yeah.
And she escaped to a neighbor's house. So we get the call. Of course, the whole city's there. We still have mom, dad, the suspect, and an 18-year-old daughter still in the house.
Had they hit law enforcement radar before? Repeat customer?
They had some like domestic violence issues. Okay. In fact, the suspect, the dad, he had been kind of in and out of the house. I think they were possibly going to get a divorce, shows up for whatever reason that night. So when we go there, I knew we were not going to have time to set up for a deliberate plan because we already had someone had, enacted this violence. There's more people in, like, let's come up with a hasty plan. So we did so. When we entered, did a shotgun breach on the patio door in the back, entered, and everybody else was dead. Pretty nasty scene. Because the little girl, she kind of was sneaking out, going from place to place, and she was bleeding everywhere. Yeah. At first, didn't really register with me. See little footprints because she's in bare feet, handprints in the blood on the wall. I didn't know why this was fucking me up so bad, and a couple of our other operators in there, I'm like, what the fuck's going on with us?
By that, do you mean fucking you up in the moment?
Yes, in the moment. Like, we cleared it, but afterwards, I know how I'm feeling. I'm looking at some very senior operators. It's not sitting well. It's funny because I went and did therapy over it, and now a couple of them have. It was the first time. I am very blessed that with every other hostage rescue I've been a part of, we either got in and rescued the hostages and took the suspect into custody or killed the suspect. Never had went in where I thought I was going in to rescue, and we didn't get there in time. So at the time, I'm thinking, fuck, did I not put my boots on fast enough? Did I not drive there fast enough? Which completely irrational thinking. But at the time, you're like, shit. If we had got here a minute sooner, because no one ever heard gunshots. So we don't know if it was after police were on scene. We don't know. So again, now I can look back and I know, Travis, that's not rational. You'll never know that.
It's not rational, but again, to keep using the word normal to help normalize this stuff for people who are in this world. Yeah. Of course you're going to have those thoughts. Right. Of course you're going to have those thoughts.
Yep. So that was the breaking point. Yeah, they took the whole team offline because it was. I mean, we showed up for training the next day. We were supposed to do hostage rescue in the live firehouse. We're like, fuck no, we're not doing this after what we just experienced. And guys in tears. And now that I know people that went and discussed this, like, yeah, Travis, I was feeling the same thing. Like, we had a pretty good run of it, which, I'm blessed to have had so many successes. But this one was like, motherfucker, like, what? Did we not do it in time? But I know, again, those are normal thoughts. We have to talk about it. So, yeah.
What was your experience like after being on the podcast and openly talking about this? What was the response? How did it go for you? How'd you feel actually after we hit the record button and stopped recording? How did you feel about talking about it the first time?
Well, so I had actually talked to my team about it, not in that depth. That was the first time. I think that's where I was nervous because I'm like, I know the influence
talking to your team about it, of your friends, is very different than talking about it on a medium that is uploaded to the internet who knows where it goes.
I was nervous, terribly nervous. I did not know how it was going to be received. I didn't know if my former agents would be like, what the fuck are you talking about this for, Travis? I did not know. The response was overwhelmingly good. In fact, man, like I've sent you an email saying that I appreciate all that you did because you obviously, the difference, where you come from, your former profession, you guys like have this status, which is good, of like the whole United States. Like they look to you guys like, okay, what did these guys do? in law enforcement, we don't necessarily have that big a voice. Maybe I do regionally, like I can, talk to these people or maybe a couple teams around me. But when I got on that podcast or your podcast the first time, literally people from across the world, like emailing me, texting me, all this shit of like.
As soon as it came out?
Yeah. Like amazing. I mean, there's not a week, I don't think, that goes by still that I don't get like, hey, just listen to your podcast with Andy back 251. Someone told me to listen to it. Like, holy shit, I've never heard anybody talk about this stuff like this. I didn't know, that what I was feeling was normal. And now, doing all these things, speaking, it was, I guess, overwhelming at first, man. Like kind of, I didn't expect it. I don't know. Cause I still think, they, there's a term for it, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I still do not think that people, or it's hard for me to fathom people want to listen to what the fuck I'm saying. But they do. So I keep doing it, but there's not a day goes by when I'm getting ready to do an event and I'm like, fuck, who the fuck am I to be talking? But I go do it. And then we've never had an instance where at least one or two people aren't coming forward to get help. So to me, that's everything. But I've had some moments where I just like, why me? I don't get it. But it's been amazing and I'm glad to keep doing it.
I think imposter syndrome is actually healthy.
Okay.
I think it keeps you hungry. I mean, just in general. Mm-hmm. I say that I just recorded a Friday episode. God, this actually ties almost directly into the conversation we're having. The Friday episode will actually be out before this episode airs, so I can talk about it.
Okay.
The title of the email was, "Get a cup of coffee. This is going to be a long one."
Oh, okay.
Well, tell me more. And it was an email from somebody who was a cop.
Okay.
Who I don't know what cop. He might have been a military police because he surged over and did some flights in and out of Kabul in Afghanistan, dealing with airplanes full of people and seeing everything that was involved with that. The clunkiness of it, death, disorder, suffering, all of those things. And he opened with his analogy, the box analogy. His theory, probably specifically for men, is that you're on a beach and the waves are coming in and out. And if you have an issue, you put it in a little box. You dig up some sand and you just put it in the hole. Cover it up with the sand, and you stand there and continue to enjoy your time on the beach. This is what he opened with. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a good email. Right. And he goes and kind of listed who he was at the beginning of his career, the impact that it had, and eventually to the point where he was self-sabotaging. It got to a place where he was, it seemed, and this is kind of my assumption, it wasn't a two-way communication on the email. It was a place where I think likely intentionally he knew that something was wrong, but maybe couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, and so was being a dick at work. He mentioned in the email actually doing work improperly just to give people the middle finger.
Fuck with people.
Just fuck you. And he wanted to be the dick, and he was angry. And he didn't say how it netted out with his spouse, but separation and acting out and dating apps and just this search almost for chaos, I would describe it as. And I think sometimes people do that because it allows them to not focus on the boxes.
Right.
Because then he basically described a meltdown, a breakdown where he found himself on the beach, but the tide had exposed all those boxes and they all popped open at the same time, and he didn't know which one to deal with because he didn't know what was bothering him. The end of the email, though, was him talking about the impact that talking with somebody and getting help had for him. And the whole reason that I read that email is it was as a reminder that people are not alone. Yes. Everybody, and I describe it as a mask. Some people, we all wear a mask, metaphorically, obviously, except for Michael sometimes. Different story, different episode.
Come on, give him something back.
We just did a Friday episode where he finally was on camera, and I wanted an Orville Peck mask or a Gladiator mask or Batman mask, and none of that shit. I didn't have any of it.
You know, it's been fucking funny to listen because no offense, I didn't know who the fuck you were before being on your podcast.
Yeah, that's fine.
But listening to him this whole year, because I don't listen to all your podcasts, but I'm like, thank God you're giving some shit back to Andy because he was riding your ass. And now you're kind of...
He didn't when we first met. Yeah. I'm forging him into the man he doesn't know he can be.
He has seasoned you, so give it the fuck back, man. I love it. Anyways.
But, so we all wear a mask. And some people's mask is really transparent. You can see the weight of their life hanging on them. If they had an argument with the spouse or work, or you can just tell. Other people have really good Hollywood CGI level masks, and you don't have any idea what's going on.
Right.
Humans are sloppy, for sure, in a lot of ways. And my whole reason that I wanted to write that email is, and I don't know when I got to this phase in my life, but I'm trying to be more empathetic with people. I see people do dumb shit all the time.
Yep.
Sometimes, although when I'm watching people do dumb shit, I'm actually looking in the mirror. So I'm definitely putting myself in that bucket too.
Yes.
The response I had for the vast majority of my life is I wanted to jump down somebody's throat. What a fucking idiot. What a piece of shit. And it's not that I don't do those things sometimes.
Yes.
I verbalize them far less, and I struggle with the internal thought process of it. But nobody knows what the fuck you're dealing with behind that mask. And the people that have the best masks are the ones that I worry about the most.
Yes.
My friends that have made decisions to end their lives, I didn't know. I did not know. And then you read maybe some of the stuff that they had left behind, or have conversations, or you can kind of do your own sleuthing to figure out what may have led to it. You're like, holy shit. I had no idea, because their mask was so good. And it's so easy for people to forget that we don't know what the fuck is going on in other people's lives. And I am trying to be more empathetic with that and just give people a little bit of a beat, a little bit more of a pause. And I think it's actually super healthy.
Yes. I mean, I realized I had lost pretty much all empathy. I was that guy. Like, you're a fucking idiot. How stupid can you be? But now I know. Give you an example from a kid that contacted me because of your podcast. He said, goes to domestic violence call, which police officers, if you come in, ask the guys around here, Mesa, be like, yeah, if I dealt with 8 in a night, it'd be like just another night in Mesa, right?
It's every day.
Everywhere.
Guys that I talk to.
So you would think as an officer, like, yep, no big deal. This is what we deal with all the time. This officer goes in this scene, fucks him up, catches some shit from fellow officers in command. Like, what the fuck? It's domestic violence. This kid grew up in a domestic violence home. That scene reminded him exactly of how his mom had just been destroyed his whole childhood. And so who the fuck are these people? Like, you don't know the different tolerances, right?
Yeah.
And I get asked this sometimes by even the undersheriff and sheriff here. Well, what if we have people abuse the system of coming forward for help, that we're saying it's a new culture we want to change? I don't give a shit. You may have 1 or 2 that abuse the system, right? But if we save another life, I think that's worth it. We have to be willing to talk about this, you know?
I think the abuse of the system will be self-critiquing from the community as well.
Yeah.
You can separate the wheat from the chaff.
For sure.
Inside, people will, one of the myths about the SEAL community that I try to dispel, and this comes from a leadership perspective. I have traveled the world at this point talking about leadership. People assume that leaders from the SEAL community have it dialed. And I actually don't fault them for this. And it wasn't until relatively recently that I was thinking about it and having conversations with my peers. How could anybody on the outside know? Because if you have a team, you have 2 teams, same individuals, but they're going to have different leaders. One has a great leader and one has a shit leader. It doesn't change the outcome.
Right.
Because success is the only metric that matters inside of the SEAL community. So if you have a fantastic leader, your team is going to thrive and they're going to succeed. If you have a shit leader, people are going to absorb that to the best of their ability. They're going to carry more water for that leader than not actual water, metaphorical water, do the job, and they're going to succeed. To an outside perspective, all you see is success.
Right.
Internally, though, if you line up a SEAL team, it's 200 guys, and they're dress whites, because those suck even more, because every time you wear them, you have to get them clean, because you put them on and you're just like, what's that black streak from? God damn it.
They need to change that.
What kind of fucking dress uniform has white shoes?
I have no
Fuck
idea.
you.
Yeah.
You line up that command, 200 people, officer enlisted, brand new guy to the commanding officer. Internally, people know who's fucked and who's not.
Oh, for
so
sure.
it can self-critique. It's not perfect, but I think it's harder for people to game. My point is, I think it's harder for people to game the system. I do agree that it can be gamed, but I think the juice is worth the squeeze.
Right. That is how I put it to everyone because, I've seen too many times that, for instance, my organization back in Mesa, they've come a long ways for saying that they're supporting officers, but the culture is still thick. And I just recently I know this officer, they're a badass officer, they're going places. They wanted to ask me some questions about using the specific, it's called the Craig Tiger Act out of Phoenix. Actually, Craig Tiger, I have to give him the recognition. Craig Tiger was a Phoenix police officer that went to his department for help, Phoenix PD, did not receive the help that he should, committed suicide. So they passed this law called the Craig Tiger Act. And this is kind of where some of our critical incident policies come forward. But anyways, if you deal with one of these 6 specific incidents as a police officer, you can apply for, and you can even get 30 days off and or 36 free sessions with a mental health professional. Your department has to pay for it. Well, this officer reaches out, says, can you tell me more about the Craig Tiger Act? I said, okay. I said, I got to ask you though first. And I know this person. I said, do you not feel comfortable going forward? She's like, Travis, absolutely not. She said, the culture is still thick. You're still demonized if you come forward. They say, oh yeah, everything's good. And then you wonder why you're putting in for a specialty unit and you don't get chosen. Mm-hmm. So that's a problem. So it's we have to keep pushing forward and keep changing that. That's what I intend to do as long as I can.
It takes time. The cultural shifts take time.
Yeah.
When I was exiting, they were what would it be? Maybe it was a SOCOM initiative, but it was a WARCOM initiative. Pre-deployment toolkits, for lack of a better word. Bringing the husband and wife in and talking about the resources that would be available while the husband was on deployment, whether it be daycare, educational support, occupational support, therapy, who to call if your dishwasher shits the bed, which of course it's fine until the day that the guy goes on deployment and then it shits the bed, or the gal that goes on deployment. When you got back, integrating a TLD, third location decompression, which I'm still not necessarily sure about the validity of that because it's really just guys getting shit-faced. Again, an argument could be made that is a tool that could be used to relieve a little bit of the stress. I think the argument there is whether or not it's a healthy tool. I think that science is a little bit definitive on that in the negative, not healthy. Can help relieve stress, not the healthiest way to do so. And then retreats when you got back. The last deployment I got back from 2010, I think it was, what's the one in LA? Is it Disneyland? Disney World? Disney something. We went up there. They had 3 days of, talking with, there was like a dinner, there was access to the park, and it's just kind of reintegrating the family, talking a lot more about mental health, just in general, longevity, not just from a physical perspective, dietary, sleep, recovery, exercise, mental hygiene as well too.
Yeah.
None of that existed 17 years prior.
So that's great. Yeah.
It's great. It's not great. It's good.
Okay.
It's not great because of how long it takes for those iterations to evolve.
Right.
17 years is a long goddamn time. And there's going to be people who fall out of that siphon that aren't going to be caught. It would be great if they could instantaneously change it, which they can't. But culture takes a long time to change.
Yeah. And we have to have people in our community, and it has to be, I call them heavy hitters. Leadership from major organizations across the country, first responder organizations, getting behind this. I'll give you an example. This lieutenant called me, where this is not a good example of some bullshit. So, how many details can I give? Because I know you say, Travis, you're responsible for everything that you say. Okay. So, a major mass shooting in the United States. A former police chief is now going around, that was the chief at the time, talking about what that incident looked like, talk about what are the top 5 priorities after the event, what you have to deal with. I know this person that went to this conference and heard this person speak. Out of those top 5, not one of them was about the mental health wellness of your employees.
What were in the top 5?
I won't be able to remember them all, but like family reuniting, identification, things like that. I can't give you them all. And this person that I know, they're not afraid to speak their mind. So they went up afterwards. Apparently this guy's shaking hands. I don't know if he had a book signing some stuff. And they, I guess, politely confronted and say, hey, don't you think that this is a priority? Like afterwards, did you have many officers that were affected by this? Oh, yeah, lots of them. Well, why aren't you telling all these other people in homicide divisions that this should be something we're looking at as an organization? And he got very offended. But that's the type of incidents like Paul's thing with down there in Orlando.
The Pulse nightclub?
Yeah, huge incident. Like you can't walk through a scene like that and not be affected somehow, if that makes sense. So
the way he described it, I had no idea the scene in the bathroom in the final holdout position.
Yes, that one when he was describing like the flooding and
there were people drowning in blood because he had stacked bodies at the door and the sprinklers were on, so it was a mix of blood and water.
Can't even wrap my head around that.
And you shouldn't be able to.
I know. And this is another thing that pisses me off. So when I first began this career, before we had body cameras, everyone had a phone, I thought it was part of our job as law enforcement to protect the rest of society from seeing and knowing all the details. Like, I really don't want, soccer mom and the family knowing what it is we do or knowing what it is we come across. Well, that ship has fucking sailed because of body cameras and phones and all this and social media, and it grows and grows. But we need to educate the community. Like, the community needs to hear, like, do you know what those police officers did on that day?
Yeah.
Forget all the other bullshit. Do you know what they walked into? And how would you feel as an individual?
Well, the problem with the things you're talking about, the body cam and the social media and the phones, is that it only captures a glimpse.
Yeah.
It's a snapshot.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And they're not, if it's an OIS, you're probably going to get the body cam FOIA'd. Mm-hmm. But they didn't FOIA the DV call. Right before that. In talking to you, bringing up domestic violence calls, every officer that I know, it is their least favorite response. They just know it's going to be emotionally charged. It might be, there's a good likelihood it's going to be drug and alcohol. It's a good likelihood it's a repeat customer as well.
Right.
And they know at the end of the day they may not actually be able to affect much change.
Right. You're going to be there again when that person bails out. Maybe they don't go to jail. Maybe there wasn't enough, and you're there again and again and again.
The body cam footage of officers responding to fatal car wrecks where children are ejected out of the vehicle.
Right.
You're not seeing that on social media.
No.
What you're seeing is a snapshot. And my concern, I do think the theory of body cam footage, I actually think it protects officers more than it puts them at risk. Mm-hmm. If you are an upstanding officer and you are upholding the responsibility and the role of your job, it's going to protect you.
Yeah.
Because there are certainly people out there who have it out for cops, whether they've had a bad interaction with the cop or they were just raised to feel that way. And they can claim a lot of shit. And when you can hit 4K video with audio and say, hey, this didn't happen, it actually protects you. But it doesn't present a fair picture of the occupation. That's the problem with what hits news organizations or social media.
Yeah. And the media, they obviously want to spin it one way, unfortunately. One that came out this week, and I showed my wife, Emily, I said, look at this video. So it's a video, I think it's East Coast. Obviously, these police officers get called to some sort of maybe wedding reception, birthday party. Like, people are dressed nice. The women in nice cocktail dresses.
Open bar, baby.
Yeah. They're going fucking crazy. So there's multiple officers and the women are fucking screaming, all this just chaos. Well, the video that made the media shows this. They're like going crazy. And the next thing I know, officer turns around and lays out a female and she is out cold. Fucking, and people going, you fucking asshole, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. And so this organization that put this video out, now here's the second video. So the first half of the video shows she goes over this officer as his back's turned. She is literally trying to get the gun out of the holster. That's all he feels. He turns around and just swings, and she's out cold. Legit, all day long. But the media is showing officer just knocked some female out. How dare he do that? Well, show the other shit.
Trimming video clips can really change the context.
It can, man.
Yeah.
But that's the shit you deal with, and you're like, what the fuck? But, I mean, it was legit. Like, yep, you got knocked out. You shouldn't grab first pistol.
Yeah, thankfully, they probably were too intoxicated or had
man.
no experience with a level 3 holster.
Yes.
So did not know how to get...
That's what it was like. You see her, and she's going down. I'm like, yep, you can go for that all day long. You're not going to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's a rough job, for sure. What... from the time you were first on, fill me in on what you've been up to and kind of what it is you're doing now. Because I know you have an event tomorrow.
I do, yeah.
Which, again, is not...
It's not going
to really help anything because it'll be... Yeah.
Yeah, since I came on here, so what happened was I started getting all this. It started really in Montana, just a lot of people asking, hey, Travis, can you come speak, talk about your story? So actually right after I was leaving you last year was the first time I was going to go present with my therapist from Arizona. We were going to the National SWAT Conference. And so we created this presentation of I walk and tell my whole career, things that I know I should have done differently, things, the bad ways that I dealt with the stress. I talk about suicide, but then what's unique, and I do not know, I will say it because I don't know, but this is what I believe. I do not believe there's another presentation to where you have the first responder giving your story and then the clinician talking about this is what it looks like clinically. Because I've been to a lot of presentations where it's just some doctorate and they're talking about book shit. And we sit there and we're like, you don't know what the fuck I do. Yep, that's all fun and games, but wait till let me tell you what I've been through. So they walk alongside me, and so we go do that at the National SWAT Conference, and it kind of explodes from there. In Montana, it just worked. I started up here in Flathead County, giving my presentation. And then I got a contract with the Department of Corrections. I've done stuff with Flathead, all over the state of Montana now. My name got thrown out to someone in New York that was a part of the New York State Homeland Security Division. And you can imagine because of 9/11, there's these just tons of money. So they've been focusing on mental health wellness. They have me come out there and do a presentation to a bunch of SWAT guys. And it just keeps growing. We're going to FBI hostage rescue in Quantico November 20th, which one of their unit chiefs heard me speak. He's like, I need you talking to my guys because they won't listen to anybody else. And so that has grown from there to where we have this organization called My Arena. And, we're not a 501c3 or anything like that. I have a cost to go travel around the country. And then we've linked up with another organization called the Overwatch Collective, which is a 501c3 out of California. He is the founder is a former Marine. He Coast Guard Reserves now. I don't know how that all works, but it does. And then he's 9-year police officer in California and on SWAT. And he knows that a lot of times we're afraid to come forward to our organization. So all their money goes to free therapy sessions, and they're hooked up with culturally competent therapists across the country. And so we help them get that message out. And yeah, we go around and now we're dabbling in consulting. So we'll go into an organization and I want to meet with, 6 to 10 employees from sworn staff to corrections to civilian. I want to find out what your program looks like. How do you feel it's going? Where do you see things are going well? Where do we need improvements? And I meet with leadership. And then we provide them a white paper afterwards, giving our best recommendations on how you can improve your program, just to help them. That's kind of what Flathead County did. And now I think we're in 5 different agencies now. So that's how it's grown, man. And it's going crazy. So.
How do you, from my own experience speaking, you can see your message landing with an audience, sometimes more than others. How do you see the message landing when it's the therapist that you worked with talking about their side of the equation?
It is extremely interesting because I always look at faces. I'm like, okay, am I getting through? You see emotions. Like we just got back from the SWAT conference. I had one guy in one of my classes. We do questions, answers. He's like, I thought I was fucked up. I have never heard anyone talk about post-traumatic stress like Travis and Jen did today. And you'll see them. It's almost kind of this relief comes over them like, shit, this is normal. I just need to deal with some stuff. I need to go work through this, and I can get to where Travis is. And it's almost kind of this relief, which I'm super happy to be able to share that message and just get through. But it is, you watch the change in what goes on with them from the beginning to the end. And I think obviously no one's had my career. They don't have the exact same calls, but you almost see them like, yep, I remember a call like that. Oh, yep, I had this buddy commit suicide. Oh, yep, I'm an asshole to my family. You know, that kind of stuff where you see someone that has been in your chair. Like when I sit across them, like, you could be up here talking about your shit just as much as I can.
Yeah.
We're the same. You know, even though we're, different past, different career, but I'm telling you what you're going through is normal. And this is what you need to do to work through some of that shit. So, but I'm not afraid to tell them you have personal responsibility. I cannot, when I talk about my past, it's not an excuse. I'm not saying, well, Travis, you had to deal with all this shit. No, Travis was a fucking asshole because I was too afraid to say this stuff I'm dealing with. What's it going to mean for me? Is this going to affect my career? We all have personal responsibility. And, but I'm telling you, if you go like EMDR therapy, I'm sure you've heard of it. Mm-hmm. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is miraculous for first responders for specific critical incidents. Like with me, I had to work through because the duct tape with Ruby. I could not, before I went through therapy, if I saw duct tape, I'd be on the floor fucking crying. Because all I thought was, that's the tape. But as simple as that may be, no, that tape that was on Ruby is in an evidence locker somewhere. This tape, yes, gray duct tape was used, but Ruby's okay. She's with a family that loves her. Like, this is not today, Travis. It's done with. And you go through and you learn how to reprocess. I just went and did an EMDR session, which once you do it multiple times, it becomes easier.
Walk me through what one of those sessions looks like.
Yep. For instance, with the Ruby case, the Ruby case took me like 9 months to deal with it because I had let that shit solidify for all those years. For instance, the hostage rescue that wasn't, we get in there and we find that scene, right? They had to walk through and you are voicing out what you're seeing as you're walking through. The therapist that is with you identifies some of those negative thoughts. So as I'm walking through and I'm saying, should we have got there quicker? Okay, we need to talk about it. You did all you could that day, Travis. You drove as fast as you could safely to get there in time to do the operation. And then some of them, and people who listen to this, you got to look it up because I'm a terrible explanation. Sometimes they'll use their finger and you're reprocessing between the left side and the right side of your brain to where there's a cognitive fail somewhere that you're not processing it and putting it back in memory appropriately. Or they have buzzers you put in your hands.
I've heard lights sometimes too.
Lights too. Yep. To where, for instance, here's one I just had. I got in a shooting in 2005. Never had real issues with it. It was controversial. It was a dude who was anti-government, blah, blah, blah. But about 4 months ago, it wasn't waking me up, but I was seeing him laying on the ground. He was in a white T-shirt and white tighty underwear, and when his T-shirt was filling up with blood. And I kept having the image of him laying on that ground. I didn't know why the fuck all of a sudden am I thinking about this? Well, a lot of that happens when you retire. Shit slows down and these memories come up. I was messed up because there was some controversy because when we pushed in there, his wife was in there. We had to deal with her. I couldn't render aid. I was still blaming myself that I didn't get to him quick enough, but I did everything I could. So I reprocessed that. Image is done. Like I can, as I'm talking to you, I know what it looks like, right? Mm-hmm. You still remember it, but it's not intrusive. It's not just popping up at random fucking times when I don't want it to, if that makes sense.
It does. The mechanism of how you achieve that does not make sense to me at all, but
don't try to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And science, like I said, science does not know why you and I could walk in the room, do the exact same action, look at the same thing. Why is Travis having a hard time with that and Andy, no problem? We don't know that. Exactly. Andy, now you can't fucking say that because someone's going to hear you say that. I can't because
I'm clearly joking.
For God's sakes. No, you're right. But we don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you're fucking having a hard time with it, let's work through it and let's deal with it. And I'm telling you, it's another thing from your podcast. I have had the good fortune to walk through with probably a couple dozen people that heard the podcast or heard other podcasts or looked at my website or social media now and saying like, okay, what's this EMDR shit? They go do it and they're like, holy shit, Travis, like it takes this weight off your shoulders. I have a lot of work to do, but my family even noticed like, hey, you're walking in here lighter. Like what's going on? And you're identifying these issues, these sticking points, and just working through it. That's why I want to get in the academy. So it just becomes like a norm.
Yeah.
That if you got to go get help.
it.
Yeah, exactly, man. So we've got a lot. I mean, there's a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of people doing, what I'm doing. Like I know Travis Howes has been on your thing before. He's big time.
Firefighter side.
Yeah. He's doing that stuff. I know there's a couple other people that go around and talk, but again, we don't have I have a big voice regionally, and I have had the fortune to travel across the country now. We're doing some things different. The FBI thing will be huge.
Yeah.
I really like going and talking to SWAT teams because, again, this comes from Paul. I use that story he told me all the time now when I'm just talking with SWAT teams, because even if your organization as a whole is still like, fuck this isn't a deal, suck it up, be tough. If you as a SWAT team, which most people in the organization look up to, like these are guys that are really hard chargers, if they're willing to say like, yeah, that call messed me up, I'm going to go get some assistance and I'm going to keep operating, I'll be fine. You're leading the way. That's why I love being with those guys specifically.
So I know that there are thousands of departments, both state, federal, local, regional, all that stuff. But if you could put your Chief Gribble hat on for today, you're the chief of all of them. Mm-hmm. Top 3 things you would change looking back at your career.
Top 3 things I would change.
Not about your career, but maybe just, and again, there's so many regionally specific things. I'm going to dump all law enforcement in general, which I know is not precise.
No.
But if you could change from a policy perspective, what would be the first few levers that you would throw?
Well, number one, like you said, front load. Like we need to get from the academy on, people need to understand. We need to not lie to them. You need to understand, like you were getting ready to choose a very heroic career at times. Society needs you. We would be chaos without you. However, some days are going to be pretty fucking horrific. And when those days come, this is what you have to at your disposal to work through that, because we want to keep you. Right now, recruitment and retention, 2 biggest buzzwords in law enforcement. The second thing is, through my entire career and mostly across the United States, the one incident that says you get 4 days off and you're going to see someone is officer-involved shooting. Most times, even though an officer-involved shooting may affect someone, I bet you if you look in their background, there's some other shit tied in there. A lot of it has to do with kids, like especially officers that maybe have a young child and they're going to do chest compressions on a 6-month-old and they've got a 6-month-old at home. We don't do anything for that. It's just like, oh, you okay? All right, good. Let's go to the next one.
It's wild.
Yeah. So there's other incidents that we as a profession need to say, like, we would expect, like my therapist from Arizona says, mostly in our profession, it's like, oh shit, this is the exception. Like, oh, that call fucked you up. Gosh, I didn't see that one coming. Versus saying, no, we would expect that. You walk into a house, like her and I were at some event, and an officer that she already sees, thank God, and this is the protocol, like if you have a specific incident and you're already under her care, like, hey, let me know what's going on. He texted and he said, yep, had to do chest compressions on a 6-month-old. 6-month-old didn't make it. I think I'm okay. But like the department wasn't giving him time off. And she's like, okay, let's set up an appointment. I want to come in. Just let's do a check, see how you are. We should expect that. Anyone fucking doing that. And if you don't feel anything about those types of calls, that's maybe not the profession you should be in. Like, just to be like numb, like, who gives a fuck? I don't care what happened there. Like, you're losing empathy at that point.
Yeah, that's not the officer that I want on the streets.
Right? Yeah, but that happens, Andy. I mean, that does. That's honestly, I kind of got there to where my empathy was gone. Like, fuck it. People are disgusting. They got this. They deserve it, whatever, because I did not know how to deal with my emotions. So, yeah, you don't want it to get there.
Yeah.
And then the final thing is just making it normal that people come forward for help. And we have to have the zero tolerance about the culture. I don't give a fuck who you are, to be quite honest with you. I don't care what you've done in your career. Like we were just talking about judging people. You don't know what they're going through. Shut your mouth and just, if they're dealing with stuff, let them deal with it and don't criticize them. We have to change that culture. And I guess I'm going on top more than top 3.
Go for it.
But another thing is,
You're Chief Gribble.
yeah, I'm chief. I'm fucking doing it. I'm tired of hearing we don't have the money. I think actually it's the undersheriff from here in Flat County. He says, I don't ever think it's a money problem. It's a priority problem.
It's 100% correct.
Right. So you can find the money. And I'm not saying this is the worst thing you can do. If you're a chief, like, okay, these, knuckleheads, they want mental health wellness. All right, we're going to take whatever, 10 grand away from their advanced training budget. No, that's not what you do. Go find more money. Go to if you're the leader, go to your city council, your mayor, your county commissioners. And even it's okay to say we have to take ownership of saying our professions fucked this up. We did not make mental health wellness a priority, but now my organization wants to do this and I need this much funding to try to get there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So that's in a quick 5-minute segment of what I think.
I mean, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
All of those steps I think are important. And I think more departments than not would probably have to start with the approach of, hey, we fucked this up in the past and we are reprioritizing. We don't want to take away from what we have. We need to build an off-ramp or a landing pad for these men and women that we asked to do this job. I don't know why people think that because you put on a uniform that it's somehow a Superman costume and bullets just bounce off of you.
Yeah.
And, literal bullets and metaphorical ones through the things that the officers are expected to deal with.
Right. And it's not just that, my mother-in-law, she's a retired ER doctor, the medical staff, the shit they deal with, firefighters, our dispatchers we've left in the dark, to be quite honest with you. I'm going to do a 911 conference in New York in October, I guess it is, but one of them heard me speak somewhere. The problem with dispatchers is they're on the call. They're like taking it up to the point it turns over to me. A lot of times they never get resolution. And we need to talk about, or they hear people screaming on the other end of the line. And I can't imagine so we just, man, it's not, I don't think it's rocket science, to be quite honest with you. I think there's some new things that we're going to, we're trying to get to. I know I listen to most of your stuff when I see it's going to be about mental health or former military people, and all the MDMA, stuff like that is a new thing. I hope we don't fuck it up, because I think it is.
Or the psychedelics as well.
Yeah, psychedelic. Yeah. I think it's the next step, and you guys are kind of leading the way, the former military, of saying, hey, we're seeing some success with this ketamine treatments, but we got to get past the stigma of like, oh, we can't do that. And this is coming from a guy, when I started in 1996, I was putting people behind bars. Like, they're not just writing a ticket for a joint. Now I could give a shit. Like, if you want to smoke weed, smoke weed. I don't care. So for me to even get to the standpoint of talk about how this could be useful for us as a profession, I think we need to at least look at it.
Yeah.
So brain scans, I mean, you guys are doing those with TBI stuff. There's stuff that shows PTSD, depression. Maybe we should be doing that at the onset of someone's career to show like, hey, what's their brain look like now? Let's do a check in 3 years or 5 years, whatever that is. Because I show this video in our presentation. It's all about EMDR. This one psychiatrist, she talks about, it's so funny in our profession. Like, if I get in a fight with a suspect, I break my hand, break my arm, whatever. Okay, yeah, of course, we're going to pay for Travis. We see this injury, right? Well, we talk about an injury that happens in the brain from me going in to see Ruby. Everyone's like, what the fuck? I don't see anything. So we have to get to that point, in my opinion. But I think we will, but it's going to take time.
It does. Those baselines are critical, because without that baseline, you don't have really any – you can't point at a black and white cost or impact of the career.
Yeah.
When you can baseline somebody and then 20 years later, I mean, I guess it's a double-edged sword too, because people might look at that and decide, that occupation is not worth it, because it has a cost associated with it. There's a price and cost.
There is a cost. But yeah, I think it's okay.
Not to air out my total idiocy when it comes to the geography of Arizona, how close is Mesa to the border? Is it southern Arizona?
Yes.
Western?
I could, back before shit got crazy, there's a town called Rocky Point, Mexico, down there we would drive to. I could get there in 4.5 hours, but I could get to the border in under right about 2.
Okay. There's a critical issue that I don't think is covered enough. Sovereign citizens.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, Michael's on board already. For whatever reasons, they seem to be, they like Border Patrol. They're trying to induce arguments with law enforcement. And I'm just curious if you ever encountered any of them down there. The southern states. Maybe there's too much sun down there. It seems to be like there's a lot of
Why
them.
are you? Is it seriously bad in Arizona? Are you saying that?
I don't fucking know. I don't get to talk to cops that often.
You know where I fucking dealt with it even more was in Michigan.
Yes.
Yes. Anti-government,
And
sovereign citizens.
begin. Tell me the tales of the sovereign citizens.
Well, man, there's lots of sad stories to go with it, but there are. I've literally been on a traffic stop in Michigan before. They called them constitutionalist at times.
Oh, there's a whole
fucking weird shit. Pull over someone on a traffic stop.
Did they have fake license plate?
Yes.
Fuck yes.
They're like, I don't have to register. I don't acknowledge you're a government. Well, I need your identification. I don't acknowledge you as a police officer.
Well, I'm just traveling.
And then they turn it. They actually then say, I'm going to arrest you for violating my rights. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yes.
Like, let's go.
That's the Uno reverse card.
Totally. I'm like,
You're going to arrest me?
Yeah.
Reverse.
It's fucking crazy, man. But
So how did you deal with that as an officer? I
honestly,
may or may not have had hundreds of hours on YouTube watching these videos.
I honestly would laugh because it's fucking funny. I mean, how can you not? Like, do you think?
What do you got, Mike? Yes, there's
the
whole
license
organizations.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so not for commercial use. That's one of their main things because in the
Yes.
Black's Law Dictionary, they're not in the conduct of commerce and they're just traveling.
Unbelievable. Yeah, these are the people we dealt with, and I didn't. You
Get
say
your
Arizona.
supervisor.
I wonder if it. Yeah, no shit. I'm going to tell you what. Yeah, that's bullshit. But yeah, I did. Did we have them in Arizona? I know we did, but Michigan's where I dealt with them the most.
So how would you end up getting their identification? Well, what would
I wouldn't. I would just take them to jail.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
How would you
Yeah.
get them out of the car?
Oh, whatever means necessary. I mean, I can't give you, but what do I need to break a window? What do you want me to do? But you're coming with me.
How far would you let them take it with their narrative? Some of these officers, we're talking 45-minute.
Can I get in trouble for any of that? I don't think I can. That was a long time ago. We would egg them on. I'm not going to lie. Because it's so fucking irrational. Like, you honestly, like, you and me take the same oxygen. Like, you think this shit is real. But we would have fun with it. Other days would piss you off. But there was a lot of it in Michigan. Yeah, they didn't give a fuck. I imagine there's a lot here in Montana.
I ask the law enforcement that I know. There was a phase. It wasn't that long ago, I'm embarrassed to say, where I was spending a lot of time on the internet researching. And
You've researched some weird shit, I think.
This is true. I'm not going to argue that. The YouTube algorithm has led me down some bizarre rabbit holes, or it led me to the opening of them, and the cannonball into it was my fault.
Okay.
The algorithm might have pointed me in that direction. But I watched one, and it was just this fascinating – it was a 45-minute video of one of the most patient officers I've ever seen in my life, where this person is pulling out what they consider to be legal documents, trying to redefine the Constitution, very heavily leaning on certain portions of the Constitution while ignoring the other. The Black's Law Dictionary is a great one, the definition of traveling versus commerce. And so, of course, I started asking my cop buddy, so what do you guys do?
Yeah.
We don't deal with that shit. I'm like, but what if you did? I guess it's not that common.
I'm surprised they don't up here. I would think, maybe that's more Idaho. I don't know.
think they just might deal with some like more hillbilly shit. It's
Yeah,
not that they
probably
have a
hillbilly.
fake license
Yeah.
plate. They just
So-
don't have a license plate.
The officer that did 45 minutes, was he playing along with them? Because that's way too long. If
He
you want,
kept asking for an identification card. I don't have to give an ID. I'm not
yeah,
I'm not
'cause
driving.
then I'll get into the weeds of like, did you think you had to ask that many times, or did you were you scared? Because I'd be like, you don't give me your ID, get the fuck out of the car.
So on YouTube, there are two distinct communities and portals you can go down.
Okay.
There's the officer footage, and then there's the
okay.
people
Yeah.
who are filming the interaction from
See, you
inside of
shouldn't
the
be
car.
telling me this because I don't even. I should. Yeah, I could go down a rabbit hole.
They Facebook Live this stuff sometimes. So they will, as soon as they're
Really?
pulled over, they start recording.
And
which-
there's new shit all the time.
all the time.
Okay.
I can give you my top dozen channels that you should take a look at. It is the repetitive nature of it. That's why I stopped watching it, because I knew the argument, and I actually wanted to do ride-alongs with my buddies in the hopes that they would encounter one.
You want to go find somebody.
And I would say, I've got it from here, because I will start their argument, because I know what their argument is before they even begin. And then I realized I wasn't a sworn peace officer, so I can't do any of that. But maybe I could sit there at the rear quarter panel and just provide legal advice, or just, hey, say this.
Are you allowed to go on a ride along here?
Oh, yeah.
Have you been?
Yeah.
It just blow you away? Like, are you like, what the fuck is wrong with people at times? Or
I think I honestly, the few times I've gone, 2 of them have been exceptionally boring. And then the last time I went, it was a DV call where the person had left, and the guy I was with goes, there's a bar right next to this place. I bet you this guy's going to be in the bar. Rolls in there. The guy's sitting in his truck. He was intoxicated when he left the house. Asked him to get out of the vehicle, and I believe the guy's response was, why don't you go fuck yourself?
Oh.
So,
see, and that's like, this is how we're starting. Okay.
Many other vehicles showed up at that point, to include a canine, which he got out of the vehicle, got put in the back of the car. I was in the front seat, and let's just say the nonstop barrage of feedback from the passenger in the rear seat was unbelievable.
Passengers are always great.
To the point where I looked over and said, do you have to deal with this shit every... Look at that guy over there. He's speeding. Officer, you're putting us at risk. This guy's shit-faced, by the way. Talking shit. He goes to jail. We get back in the car. Female this time, some kind of disturbance at a bar. We get over to that point, and as we're pulling up, she's face down in the parking lot. And I'm like, hey, that's a body over there.
Yep.
And he goes, oh, boy, here we go.
Here we go.
So then people are piling out of the bar. Again, more officers end up coming. He was trying to, are you okay? And she was just passed out, laying down. I don't know the technical difference. She arose as he got there. Hysterical, screaming, not able to breathe. Ma'am, can we just give you a ride home?
Okay.
But she couldn't even talk. And I'm just sitting on the front quarter panel of the vehicle, just kind of looking around. And so that was the last one that I went on. But yeah, you can go.
Yeah.
I think some of that drives my desire to want to have more empathy for people.
Yeah.
The woman, obviously, probably on the verge of, if not past the verge of blackout drunk. Mm-hmm. Not going to feel awesome the next morning from a physical perspective, probably an emotional perspective. Pretty sure she might have ate a few shots.
And that's just another Tuesday night.
Yeah, and I'm not talking the liquid type of shots. Pretty sure she got tuned up a bit. She was telling the officers, if you take me home, my boyfriend's going to kill me. I need you to sit out front of the house. And the officer's like, yeah, no problem. We'll have shifts.
Yeah.
So just get the fuck in the back of the car so I can get you out of here.
For God's sakes.
But they're shit experiences. Mm-hmm. And I can understand completely how your empathy can disappear. Mm-hmm. And I would say, not even slowly.
Yes.
You can do 6 months of dealing with shitheads or people in their worst moments. Right. It doesn't take a career for the empathy to slide.
Yeah, it doesn't. And that's why, I'm never condoning when anyone loses their shit, and crosses the line, breaks the law. But you wonder, someone shows up to a call like that. You don't know what the last 2 calls have been.
Yeah.
Maybe they just pulled someone out of a wreckage, a dead baby, whatever. I don't know. And someone says, yeah, go fuck yourself. Like, oh, sure, let's go. Do you know what I just fucking dealt with?
Yeah.
And where I think, we see these few incidents where officers cross the line, but how many millions of contacts with the public goes on where officers are restrained?
Yeah.
I don't think people, I shouldn't say that. Most of the public, I still do believe, I have this belief that they do understand what it is we go through and they respect us. But those few that don't, like, you literally look at what we go through and you think that, I might lose my temper or I might do something stupid.
Yeah.
I think we'd be naive to think not. So
there's what you guys go through, and then there's what led to that woman face
man.
down. Like, why? I do think it was a weekday too.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a Tuesday, but it might have well been a Wednesday or a Thursday. How much? What got you to your station in life? What kind of childhood did you have?
Yes.
And that's not a free pass, but just give it a beat.
Yeah. Do you think we ever have the younger people in these careers, or is it reasonable to expect to have that kind of empathy when you're young? Or do you think it always is going to take life experience?
I think, again, it falls back onto a spectrum.
Okay.
It's the same as leadership. I get asked this one all the time. Are you born a leader or can you teach it? The answer is yes.
Right.
Some people have phenomenal tools and some people have less of those tools. But even if you're great at leadership, you can improve. If you suck at it, you can get better than what you came out of the box.
Yeah.
You might have a glass ceiling. So I think empathy, assuming we're not talking about a Dahmer type sociopath where it's impossible.
Right.
I think it is tied to life experience to some degree. But again, front loading may not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Take whatever you have going into the academy and let's start building on that.
Right.
As opposed to waiting for you to need to be 10 to 15 years through your career before you start understanding that aspect of it.
Yeah. Like I have my oldest son has struggled with addiction. He's actually doing okay right now. I used to be an idiot about that stuff. Didn't understand it. Like fucking heroin addicts, wherever on the side of the street, like, clean yourself up, get better. Now I understand it because life has punched me in the face with it. And so, I've developed an empathy. I think we all could do better. I'm getting almost, I guess I'm a lot like you as far as the empathy goes. It's getting more and more for me all the time. We're like, man, I don't know what they've been through. Like, there's no way they can be happy in the way their life's going.
How has that change in your thoughts on empathy impacted your relationship with your son?
Much better. I still hold him to like, hey, you still have personal responsibility here, man. Like
empathy never removes that.
No, it does not. And even from the standpoint of like, you've got some tougher situations now because of the choices you've made. I still understand like you are battling with an illness, but you still have to push through that. And there's lots of people that give us those examples of their life has changed and they've pushed through it. Even though they're still an addict, they still, if they have someone doing meth in front of them or heroin, like that's not an easy day, It's
like people who struggle with substance abuse via alcohol.
Yeah.
They may never drink again, but they're likely still an alcoholic.
For sure. Yeah. So, has that changed me with that type of empathy? Fuck yeah, it has.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you think it would have impacted your job if you would have had that thought process going back to the beginning of your career?
A lot better. Yeah.
Not with the sovereign citizens, though, right?
No,
fuck those guys.
Yeah. You're brain dead. Yeah. I think it would have helped, Andy. Yeah. Cause I was like you were describing kind of like, you're a fucking idiot. Why do you live like this? Or understanding, like, let's take a domestic violence victim, maybe a woman, she keeps going back. I don't understand all that shit. But before I used to be like, you are an idiot. Why would you go back? I don't understand it, but sometimes the psychological effects of all that, the pull is so hard. You just keep making those poor choices,
Maybe the role model for that person, their mother modeled that exact behavior from the beginning of their known memory.
Right. Yeah.
And then again, this is where I think it has to be said, you're not responsible for the trauma that occurs to you, but you're 100% responsible what you do with it. If you keep going back to an abuser, I can have empathy for the way that you were raised, but you have got to take responsibility for your future.
I agree.
It's not a free pass. It's just something that I am personally working on, and it has made my life more enjoyable by being able to just, okay, let's take a break here.
Yeah.
Instead of being, you fucking idiot, which I was going to
say, there's times where I'm like, okay, I have lost my patience. It's done. So, and Emily's really good about it. She'll feel me like getting to that point and just a hand on the shoulder, like, you're good.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I'm about to have this blow up over something stupid. So
what's the event you're doing up here in Big Fork?
So I have a girl that works for me. She's kind of a contractor, does all this. I hate social media, like with a passion, but this has been an outreach for me. She kind of handles that stuff. She lives up here in Big Fork and wanted to do an event for first responders. Then we also do, so my regular presentation is anywhere from 6 to 8 hours long. It's a long day, but we also do a family event for 2 hours to where I just speak to families in a very watered down version. I'm not giving them graphic details about what we go through, how hard it is sometimes to come home at the end of a shift and act like it's normal. Talk about decompression time, plans for families. And so she wanted to put this thing on. And this is actually the first time I've always been a supporter of veterans, but It's now turned into like the VFW and Big Fork. They're behind it. So we're inviting veterans. I think that's going to be our next outreach, because I don't know if, I guess you could almost tell me this, because I was wondering this. Guys that come from your community, obviously, you have far reach, you have some heavy hitters. I have felt lately some guys reach out to me, maybe just the general military population at times, they feel a little bit left out.
Yeah.
Like they have dealt with some shit, so they've kind of been communicating with me more. Some groups have been asking like, hey, could we be a part of this event? So this is the first time we've offered it to veterans. So in Big Fork at the Marina Cay Resort, I think one of the owners is part of the VFW in Big Fork. They're, giving it to us all free. We've raised money on our own, so it's free to all the attendees. Like Proof Research is donating a couple of barrels for us to do for a raffle to pay for expenses. And
Sweet.
So we'll see, man. I tell you, I'm nervous because I have never, I don't know why this is dumb, but I've never hosted an event on my own to where the numbers are based on Travis and us putting out information on it, which I don't necessarily like that part of it. Mm-hmm. All my other events have been, okay, this department wants to have Travis in. They set it all up. I show up, do my thing. The numbers are totally based on them. But I'm okay doing that. I just don't ever want it to be about like, hey, selling Travis or come listen to this guy. Cause I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm just telling you my shit, man. And like, I want to try to give you some resources. So we'll see how it goes. And you guys, I don't know if you even approve this, but you guys are providing free coffee tomorrow. So thank you.
Yeah, that was single-handedly my decision that I'll make sure.
So it was I don't even know the name, but Taylor went up and talked to your manager. So yeah, you guys are giving
Connor or Kevin.
Yeah, giving us coffee. I don't know which it is, Connor or Kevin. I don't like all that stuff.
Kudos to both of them.
Yeah.
Let's assume it was a joint effort.
Yeah, I hope so. But thank you. So yeah. So yeah, and then we're providing dinner at the family event. And so we'll see how it goes, man. So
don't even worry about the number of people who show up. Use it as a test run for when you're packing places out. Like, you know what I mean? Pick a metric that actually, it'll happen.
Yeah.
Pick a metric that you can control, and that is your up, your presentation, the things that you can control, and just build it over time. Man.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit? How
and
many
I
people show up?
honestly, man, this is what I always say when I go into an event. If we help one person, it's worth it. I don't care if there is 25. I don't care if there's 200.
Yeah.
If we help one, that's worth it. And I've been blessed to be able to do this right now. And I'll keep doing it, man, as long as people want to listen. And then eventually I'll be up in the mountains of Phillipsburg and hunt all the time. But right now this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So
fair enough. Where can people find you?
So you can go to my Instagram, my_.arena. And then my website is myarenallc.com. So go there, see what we're all about. And
why did you add the LLC to the website?
I think I was part of the email shit. But
super weird flex. You
is
don't
it?
have to let people.
Is it?
Oh, by the way, guys, I'm a pretty big deal.
But now,
sole proprietor LLC.
But now, so part of my biggest. So this has been. I don't know. Maybe you are naturally gifted with business.
No.
Okay.
Fucking
This
idiot.
has been it's been a hard thing for me. So I'm changing now to what is an S Corp because
yes, it's a different type of incorporation.
Yeah.
Don't ask me what the difference is, but I'm familiar.
Well,
There's C Corp.
My tax guy said this is what you need to do because I never imagined. I mean, we've done over 30 events since I came with you.
That's awesome.
I never imagined it. So that whole side of it, like my wife is kind of handling the financial business side and traveling and.
Never underestimate the value of a good accountant.
I know. He has helped me tremendously.
Yeah.
I have no fucking idea. Like I walked into your place today and I'm like, how do you even, I mean, you have good people working with you, obviously, but even for a 1 or 2 person show, it's no joke.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, it's a whole different journey with the coffee shop from my business partner and I mean, it was an idea that we took all the way to fruition. I had never developed a property.
Yeah.
Let alone sat down with architects and ideated on theme and what do we want it to look like. I remember going to the first meeting. Isn't that your guys' wheelhouse, what this is going to look like? Right. 18 months of looking at PDFs to construction to managing a construction project to hiring. How do you develop a team in a brick and mortar building? It's interesting.
It is. But I'm learning as I go.
Yeah.
And we'll keep going.
What do you want to close out with, man? We'll get you back to your wife and back to beautiful Montana.
Yes. Any individuals listening here, I don't care. You don't have to be a police officer or firefighter, whatever. If you're dealing with trauma, just like you said earlier, you're not alone. But you have personal responsibility to deal with your shit. And there are ways to do that. The people around you, because of them, you love them, take that step to do what you got to do to get better. And so,
Right on, man.
all right.
Well, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Bye.